Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode in our virtual Kubernetes Breakfast Club. We are all locked down for the second wave. We have here today Ian Eyberg.
I'm the CEO over at NanoVMs. We're a company based in San Francisco, although I haven't been to the office for about 4 months now. So.
Like us all.
I lived and worked in the Bay Area for the past 10 years. And, before that was from the Midwest.
As a disclaimer, all views, opinions are definitely personal and have nothing to do with our employers. If we were to have a real breakfast, what would I see on your plate?
Definitely some bacon, some coffee. I'm kind of from the Midwest South area, so strata is popular there.
What drove you to kind of start NanoVMs?
The company hasn't always been kind of focused on what we're doing right now. To be honest, I was looking at APM type of software before we kind of morphed into this. 2015, 2016 was kind of when that transition occurred. I was reading a lot of academic papers on unikernels and, just found it really fascinating. I got to the point where I was wondering why somebody hadn't written a Go unikernel yet. I've been writing a lot of Go at the time, and turns out, it's relatively hard. so we went out and got the first Go unikernel written on rump-run. So Go rump. That just kind of completely blew my mind once I spun it up on KVM for the first time, and it's like this is clearly what the future is going to be like.
For those in the audience that are struggling with containers or are trying to wrap their heads around Kubernetes and serverless and all those crazy stuff, what are unikernels like?
The unikernel is the synthesis of one single application, the operating system bits that it actually needs kind of merged into one unit. And so when you deploy on Amazon or Google or wherever, you're not deploying Linux and then running a bunch of stuff on top. You're literally just deploying that application. You boot straight into it. These tend to run a lot faster. They tend to be a lot more secure. And, if you have your own servers, you can actually just cram them onto a server. We have crappy servers at the office where we have like thousands of them, running.
Amazing.
So it's
just like 1,000 processes.
This is another way of looking at it it's putting a thin virtualization wrapper around each process. It just really kind of depends on what your base infrastructure is. But if you're using something like Google or Amazon, Google is basically KVM with an API. Amazon was using Zen. Most of their newer stuff is KVM. That's what the cloud is. It's virtualization with an API. When you talk about things like complexity or sprawl in that manner, unikernels kind of offer a relief from a lot of the complexity that we have in today's cloud infrastructure, simply because there's nothing there to kind of configure or administer. And a lot of the responsibilities that you might have in, say, like a container ecosystem where you're duplicating a network layer or you're duplicating a storage layer or the security or, all these different layers that are already provided on the base cloud.
Right.
With unikernels, since they're VMs, we just get to reuse what's there. So we don't have to spin up all this stuff.
I'm going to take you to my time machine right now. And we're scrolling back in time 5 years ago. We appoint you as the CTO of Docker, and what the future 5 years ago would look like today. I mean, Docker kind of played with unikernels, but they never took it to the next level.
Yeah, so I have opinions on that. So unikernel systems are basically the Mirage OS crew. They were trying to do Docker on Mac at the time. And, everybody in your audience knows that containers are inherently a part of Linux. Like they're literally part of Linux. Yeah. And so when you're trying to do that on Mac, you have to figure out your networking, storage, all this sort of stuff. To do so, I mean, it's possible, but you really need good systems engineers to do that. I think that's why that acquisition was made, not necessarily to bring unikernels into the fold, especially not OCaml-based ones. Here in the US, I can think of about 2 companies that are well known that use OCaml, like Jane Street. From an adoption standpoint, there was just no way you would see mainstream adoption.
Mainly, I think what Docker did like really good is building, kind of iOS level, and I apologize for the Android folks in the audience, which is like super simple to kind of build containers and move them around. And, Kubernetes and with scheduling and container orchestration is kind of different game. Why this hadn't happened with unikernels?
There's two groups of unikernels. The language-specific ones like Mirage, HalVM, they're good, they're awesome and interesting, but at the same time, the vast majority of people won't use them because they are only using one language. Now, if you look at stuff like OSV, RumpRun, Nanos, which is ours, that camp, they don't care what language it is. And it's basically, hey, if it runs on Linux, we can run it. In my opinion, like you're just not going to get any adoption without having that. Now, if you look at OSV and Rump, one of the major problems with adoption with those ecosystems was the lack of tooling. If somebody goes to like RumpRun's wiki right now and tries to run a hello world unikernel, they're probably gonna like shoot their brains out before they try to do like the most simple hello world. That's a big problem.
Kubernetes had like a couple of weeks ago a vulnerability in the networking subsystem where containers with the right privileges could manipulate the network stack to pretty much intercept all the traffic from the host. And neither gvisor nor Firecracker or any of those technologies were likely to be immune to this weakness because it actually happened in the underlying networking stack. As a big proponent of advanced network security, the sandboxing technologies is something that to some extent improve your security, but it's not a bulletproof thing.
A controversial topic that I bring up with Kubernetes quite a bit is that, it breaks a lot of the existing Unix abstractions that we have. Now, arguably, the public cloud broke a lot of those abstractions to begin with. Both parties are kind of to blame there, but with Kubernetes, like the thing is, like if you get one container in a Kubernetes cluster, you basically own the entire cluster, no matter how many servers it expands. But if you broke into like a Linux box, you might get access to some MySQL server or whatever, but in general, you're not immediately given access to everything.
I'm going to try and kind of test your emotional responses. Let's start with the kind of recent DevOps hype, GitOps.
VC bullshit. I know people that are really into that, and that's cool. I know VCs really like it right now. So all right, you're gonna make sure that you're not gonna raise funding from those VCs that are running this bullshit. So. Istio and service mesh. A lot of people talk trash on Istio. If you're in the Kubernetes world, something like that is actually pretty valuable to have. Once again, you're duplicating the networks on top, and so everything from routing to latency requirements to all that sort of stuff is pretty valuable if you're in that world.
What about CNCF?
I know of no projects that are in CNCF that in the unikernel ecosystem.
Will you be the one that breaking through this glass?
No, I'm not a huge foundation person.
What about serverless?
There's a lot of people that are super interested in that, especially in a lot of the very large enterprises out there. I think one of the reasons why is like they're always coming off with these ad hoc tasks that, little software projects that are needed, for now or for a couple of months, but they might not be around forever. And serverless is actually a decent fit for that because there's not much thought that you need to put into it. You write a script, you put it into what we might do as a cron in the past, but now serverless kind of fills that. So I do see that growing.
We are definitely going to keep an eye on you and NanoVMs and whether you will be the one that will bring the promise of unikernels to the masses. So thanks so much, Ian, for your time.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me.
Good luck, Ian, with NanoVMs. I'll definitely keep an eye.
All right. See you guys.